it's Webs here with a guide to Task 7 of the Leroy Jenkins Mercenary event in Hearthstone. The task in question is doing 200 damage in one turn. So the easiest way to actually do this is to abuse Cookie in a low level bounty, so you can summon a bunch of fish to the opponent's side so you can actually buff up Leroy with Cariel using Tome of Judgment as a way to increase his attack by 10 per single use, and just have 4 of the fishes on the other side so you can actually just finish them off in one fell sweep with a fully upgraded Leroy Jenkins ability. This is required no matter how you do this task, in my opinion, because this allows you to attack all enemies, making it much easier time to actually complete this task. And honestly, it is the only ability, if you're completing the task this way, that you actually need fully upgraded. The other 2 abilities don't really matter at all, but there is another way that you can actually do this task that I found out while testing for this task if you do not have Cookie. As I know, he is a rare mercenary, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have him unlocked. You probably do want to unlock him as quickly as possible just because of the fact he is used to abuse so many tasks, and it is a really good mercenary just to finish some tasks. Now for the other way to actually complete this task, I spent a lot of time actually testing out other mercenaries to try to figure out the best way to actually buff Leroy Jenkins up, especially ones that were pretty easy for a new player to have access to. And it turns out a lot of the free mercenaries that a lot of people have access to are really good ways to buff up Leroy. Then you just come across the issue of trying to figure out which bounty to actually complete. And for this task, I actually completed the Naru Fireblade bounty as the task to actually complete this, because this does give you a faster on the opposite team, thus you don't actually have to raise your attack up to 50. You could raise it to something a little bit lower, but if you raise it to 50, you only need 3 targets, and he does summon a bunch of ads, so he is a really easy target to complete this task on, though you are going to have a much harder time than doing it just with Cookie, but it is still possible. We're using Ariel with Tome of Judgment as her equipment to buff up Leroy as quickly as possible. We're using Leroy Jenkins with even bigger sword. This allows him to gain additional attack from his first ability, even if you're not using it that much. You're using Cornelius with Shield of the Dawn to decrease the damage he's taking, and since he is the one that's taking the main brunt of the force of damage, that's a way to increase his survivability. If he dies, you bring in Rokara as a way to continue to buff up Leroy. Same thing with Cariel. Rokara is usually the 4th mercenary you put down, and probably the only one out of the remaining mercenaries that actually kind of matters in this team, because usually one of them actually does die during the boss fight. Cyril is just in here to have an increased chance of having increased HP and attack for Alliance mercenaries, and then Guff is in here as a additional way to buff up Leroy. There are a few things you actually want to avoid while actually going up to the boss. You want to avoid all protector boons just so you can easily protect Cariel with Cornelius, as you don't want her to ever have taunt if you can help it, because if she has taunt, she's going to easily die, and you might not be able to recover a way to actually buff up Leroy as quickly as you normally would. You're also probably going to want to avoid with Hot Potato, because you really don't want to risk losing the 200 plus damage with Leroy if you spent all the time actually getting to the boss and buffing him all the way up, just to lose it to Hot Potato's AoE damage, as that is no fun, and that happened a few times within testing. The other thing you need to pay attention to is you will probably have to use Get Chicken a lot when you're actually going up to the boss, as you're probably going to be rotating between Get Chicken and Leroy Jenkins as the abilities that you use to actually get to the boss. But once you get to the boss, you might throw in a wild swing here and there just to finish off the last remaining damage that you need to actually scale up with. This is a much harder way, as mentioned before, to do this task, but it is still possible, and I wanted to show it off. So let's look at how we do it both ways. Alright, so we're going to start with the cookie cheese as the first method that we're actually going to showcase how to do it. We're just going to end up passing the turn back here, because we don't want to do enough damage where we kill the mercenaries on the other side. We're going to put down the first fish, and then just keep passing the turn back while buffing up Leeroy for 10 attack every other turn, while also trying to minimize the chance of hitting the fish that does 15 damage to all enemy mercenaries, as we don't want to accidentally kill that fish. And now we're at 50 damage, but we're going to pass the turn back again just to spawn another fish, and then we can go above 50 damage too. There's no worries, and then we'll spawn one last fish. Not because we need to, just to be careful, and it does give us a higher chance of actually finishing this task. We're going to buff up Leeroy a little bit further just because. And finally, we're going to use Leeroy Jenkins and just finish off the entire board and do way over 200 damage. Alright, now that we have the easy way out of the way, let's try to show off how to do the harder way. We're going to start off with Leeroy, Cariel, and Cornelius. We're going to buff up Leeroy a little bit here, just so we can get some HP on him. And then we're going to heal up the two adjacent mercenaries while also trying to make it where we have an easier time to protect those mercenaries by doing so. We're going to buff up Leeroy and give him 7 attack here. It shouldn't really matter. Everything has so much HP that we won't be able to one-shot really anything. So it doesn't matter how much we have. We hit the portal, which is probably the best thing that we could have done. We're going to use the get chicken again and then attack into one of the imps that have been spawning. The bad news here though is we're losing Cariel probably this turn, but we do have backup plans in the form of both Rokara and Guff. As long as we keep up Leeroy, we should be perfectly fine. We're going to use offensive rally here just to buff up Leeroy by a little bit, heal him a little bit, and then use wild swing to attack. And it hits the portal again, which is really good for us. And now we can put Guff down and combo him out with one of the other mercenaries' first abilities, just so we can actually snipe the death blow on Guff's first ability. This will put Leeroy at 50 plus attack, which will allow us to finish this task next turn. Or we could actually just use wild swing to make sure we do. I'm going to use offensive rally just as a additional way to try to get more attack, and it also helps Leeroy survive. There's no way they could kill it here, so we should be perfectly fine. Now the really questionable thing here though is if they're going to be able to summon 2 more imps before we actually get Leeroy off. So we're going to basically just use get chicken and then use the taunt as a way to try to protect Leeroy. They shouldn't have enough damage to kill Leeroy, so we should be perfectly fine by doing this. And now this turn we can just finish them off with Leeroy Jenkins and then pass the turn and get the challenge out of the way. Alright, I hope these 2 methods of completing task 7 for the Leeroy Jenkins event helped you out, and if they do, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, bye bye.